Hello, I'm Sarah Fellows, WQXC News. Thank you for joining us for Issues and Insights. We're today with Paul Najar. Morning, Paul.
Good morning. How are you, Sarah?
I'm well. Now, Paul is the Chief Operating Officer with Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame, which is where we find ourselves today. This place is spectacular.
Well, thank you. It is wonderful to come into a place that is so rich with history and so bright and effusive with a passion that, you know, that's what Kentucky's about. High school basketball is one of our treasures, and this is what we try to come. That's what we try to get across here at the High School Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, passion. You said the word passion, and you see that as we go through. We'll really see just some of the audio that you hear and the pictures. Passion is really what's captured in all of this.
It absolutely is. The history, the culture, everything that Kentucky stands for, you can trace back to a few things. Mm-hmm. One of them is high school basketball. You can love red, you can love blue, you can love Murray, you can love East. It doesn't matter what school you cheer for on the college level. Everyone has those memories of high school, and this is where it all began, and that's what we try to capture. We tried to capture here. We think we did a pretty good job of it. Of course, there's more to come in the future, but this is where we are right now, and I find it a thrill to come into and work at every day.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit about your own passion for this, because obviously just in the time that we've gotten to talk about this, this is such an exciting place for you to be, and your passion really comes through when you talk about it. Where does that passion come from for you?
Growing up in Western Pennsylvania, I had a connection to Kentucky through my oldest brother, played football at Louisville, and where I grew up, football was everything. It was like basketball here, but I was a basketball player, and I loved the game, and I loved knowing that I could go visit my brother and rebound basketballs at Crawford Gym for some of these super iconic stars of the game, some of whom are in this Hall of Fame, like Darrell Griffith, like Wesley Cox, like Junior Bridge. Well, Junior's not in the Hall of Fame, but guys who, Bobby Turner, and Manuel Forrest, just those Louisville players. But I also got to know about the high school players. My brother would send home information through the papers, through the Sunday sports sections, and you know about these greats who were going to Kentucky and the constant battle for that talent. Right. But the talent's here, and the passion for the game started with me very young in learning how to do the simple things over and over. Great coaches in my youth. And growing up in my hometown of Johnstown, Tony Tomaselli was my first coach, and Larry Wayner was one of my assistant coaches, and John DeFazio and Rob Ecken. These guys had an impact on me that lasts to this day. I'm still friends with them, and we fondly recall those days of my youth when basketball was ingrained in me, and the rich history that is involved. I learned something from the visitors all the time because you hear their stories, and that makes this an even a more rich experience because you can add that flavor to everyone who comes through. Right.
It's really, I think it's like you said, it connects a lot of dreams that have been brought to life through basketball, through high school basketball. Now this space it was a dream at one point in time and has become a beautiful reality. And like you said, it even has future plans for developing even beyond this. Can you just briefly talk about where did that dream start and how did it get where it is today?
Sure, Sarah. It started with about 8 or 9 years ago, actually, just recognizing so many great basketball players who were not in the Kentucky High School Athletic Hall of Fame or haven't been recognized. And Ron Bevers, local legendary coach at North Hardin for years, over 800 wins in his career. He and another couple other board members, Ken Trivett and the Kentucky Association of Basketball Coaches, they started this idea of let's get a recognition in high school basketball in Kentucky. Girls, boys, women, girls coaches, boys coaches, and start that process. Once they got through that first Hall of Fame induction in 2012, it really got a lot of support and energy towards we need to put a flag in the ground, get this space. Yeah. The city, they put out to bid throughout the Commonwealth, cities across the Commonwealth, some smaller municipalities bid. Elizabethtown had a great offer and had been great to us. The community, the county, Hardin County, the city, everyone involved, the support from businesses and people from across the Commonwealth, but mostly right here in Elizabethtown and in Hardin County has been tremendous. So that's where it started, in this historic space.
Right, because this has been a staple of downtown Elizabethtown for as long as anybody can remember.
1839,
right.
First Presbyterian, Helping Hands Ministries, and to see how it's been redesigned
right.
to integrate. You know, a lot of people say, you know, in Western Pennsylvania, you went to high school football on Friday, college teams on Saturday, Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday.
Right.
And it was religion. In high school basketball here, there is such a passion and such a faith in your school, in your team, in your coaches, in your players, girls, boys, doesn't matter. There is a connection there that is really rich, and we don't shy away from that connection at all.
That's a great metaphor for that sense of what faith and that can bring to a person's life, and how that runs in the veins
and
of
the journey
of those in Kentucky.
Of young kids, and like you mentioned, the dreams earlier and that's what our Essence of the Game video is about the Sweet 16, a young child's dream of hitting that shot, winning that game, holding that trophy, and not just winning, but competing for it.
Right.
It's a huge, huge part of the Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, let's move our way through. I'd like to go to a couple of other places and talk to you more about it.
Fantastic.
So we're standing in a locker room. I love that this is part of this, because I mean, you really feel like you're in a locker room. This is amazing.
It's something that every student athlete who's picked up a basketball, who's put on a uniform, who's put on sweats, they know what the drill is.
Right.
Whether you have a nice new bench here or one that's old and prickly and doesn't feel so good to sit on, every high school student athlete who's played the game has that connection to the locker and to the audio that you hear in a locker room coming from the coaches. We have an audioscape here that you'll hear from 3 Hall of Fame coaches who are still currently coaching. Coach Billy Hicks from Scott County, Coach Donna Moyer at Sacred Heart Academy, coaching the girls, and Coach Randy Napier at Perry County Central High School. For the last 23 or so years, he's been there, and even before that at MC Napier High School from 1980. So these coaches are legendary, and you'll hear them in your experience give instructions about pre-game instructions, in-game instructions, halftime adjustments, and then the post-game recap of what happened and how it all works, from the motivational aspect to the instructional aspect to the reflective aspect. Coaching is a big deal, and every school has their legend coaches, just like they have their legend players. Girls, boys, doesn't matter, they all have them.
Well, and you mentioned the audio. I just want to go back to the space that we're in, because it really is, there's so many dimensions when you come through the Hall of Fame. It's not just that you're seeing pictures or just that you're seeing stories. You're hearing the stories and you're feeling, the cold lockers, and it really just adds to the experience, I think, of that multidimensional feel of really being there while it's happening, hearing those coaches talking.
Absolutely, and not only that, you have the marker boards. You have this poster here, Developing Winning Strategies, where you learn about the great coaches in Kentucky high school basketball history. Some of these who are in the Hall of Fame, from Letcher Norton to John Bill Trivett to all these coaches in here in the lockers here. Coach Bobby Keith, Bobby Watson, Howard Beth, and Ralph Carlisle. So you also, around the corner, you'll have a chance to draw up and diagram plays.
I saw that. That was really cool.
Where you learn how, hey, what's most effective against this defense? How do you want to plan to attack this type of offense? And it's a matter of getting that experience of the locker room, whether it's hearing your pep talks, hearing your preparation talks, going over your notes, or looking at the plays too and how you diagram them. When you see little kids in here, it's amazing that as a youngster growing up, I had to follow the coach's lines on a paper, right? And then kids as they develop, these young kids now know how to diagram. They get the magnets out, they're on the marker board, they can draw them all up. So it is a real important aspect to this, the coaching aspect. It's an important part of the Kentucky Association of Basketball Coaches, but most for us, it's that development of the youth through coaching that takes you to a new height, takes you to a new level.
When you're talking about these Hall of Fame coaches, what in your opinion and your experience, what really draws out a coach and makes them spectacular, like these coaches that are being showcased in the Hall of Fame?
They have a plan. They work the plan and they plan the work. First of all, they think about what they can do with the talent. It's like a great sculptor. You've got a piece of rock, and you're going to chip away at it and create something. It's an artistry. There's an art to it. And these coaches, with their distinct styles, every coach has a style. Every coach, multiple styles. But they know how to plan what they need to do to be successful with these youngsters, and they know how to work that plan. But most importantly, they plan the work. They plan to change and have an effect on kids' lives. And if you want to take it a step further, they change lives. We always hope for the better, but that's what they do. They change lives through this experience.
Well, and they've been doing it in Kentucky for a very long time. And the next place we're going to see is a whole wall of that history. So I'm excited to get there.
Oh, 100 years of it. There's plenty to look at for sure.
All right. So Paul, we're standing here on this wall of history, and I cannot get over how much history is here. I love the way that you all have marked the time with this. So it's really about the beginning of basketball, really, and then how that's moved through the history of Kentucky.
It starts with Dr. James Naismith creating the game in the late 1900s in 1895 or 1891, whatever. 1895 is when but he created the game. We have a little nod to Dr. Naismith, and then we have in 1895, after he created in 1891, that a group of men at the Louisville YMCA, they played the first known basketball game in Kentucky. So we have these historic photos. The company that we commissioned to do this work, Solid Light, did a great job of interpreting what so many wonderful minds, so many people who were involved in the history of this game through decades and decades. They presented them with, hey, we want to hit these stories, and they fleshed them out so well. 1917 high school games got organized. That's 100 years of history, Sarah, and that's when it started. We had the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, and then for the traditional African American schools, it was the Kentucky High School Athletic League. Not together, they were separate, right, segregated. And some of the photos here you'll see with the girls' teams are pretty incredible. I
love these old photos of what these women had to play basketball in.
Yeah,
like I would go to church in this.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't imagine playing basketball in it.
Exactly. You would, the hair pieces, the hats, what they had to do, the stories behind them. And I can't confirm those, but to wearing things in your hair had to be to keep it under control.
Right.
And because you didn't have hair products like you have today, I think it was really important for the hair to be out of the face back then. So it was just little unique things that you've got these cone-shaped hats, you've got these flowery things, really neat, and then the outfits.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
such a rich
fashion.
history. Yeah, well, that's well, and I love the story that this wall tells, because it goes. You talked about segregation. You talked about women's involvement, and there were some big occurrences that happened in basketball with both of those things, and that's really illustrated here on this wall.
Right here and right behind you. 1932, the sport was deemed not safe for girls.
I like how that's in not safe for girls. Yeah.
So no more girls basketball on the high school level officially. Now there were some schools in eastern Kentucky that would play. Some girls' high schools would play. There was the Catholic schools in Louisville would, and there were several high schools in Louisville public schools that would as well. There were around the state. There were little dots here and there. But in the 100-year history of Kentucky high school basketball, over 1,000 schools were, at some point in history, in that 100 years, played basketball, but only a few of the girls' teams did between 1932 and 1975, when girls' game came back into official Kentucky High School Athletic Association purview.
Well, and I think that's ironic because I love watching women's basketball. That's probably my favorite to watch, and it's so physical. It's so aggressive is not the right word,
fast.
but yeah, it's just so.
It's the speed of the game has, you know, some of the all-time greats in Kentucky high school women and girls basketball, from the mid '70s and early '80s through those early years of getting it back on board. They had tremendous, dynamic superstar players, individuals, but the game was played at about 20 miles an hour. The game now is played full throttle.
Oh, like 400 miles an hour.
It is
so
up
athletic.
and down and up and down, and it's a tribute to the terrific high school girls basketball coaches we have in the Commonwealth, and the dedication they have to these young ladies in getting them to play at that level, and have that desire and that passion to achieve that much. It's pretty special to see what these young women can do.
Well, and the other story we mentioned that's on this wall is the idea that, of course, it was all many things were segregated, obviously, and then in the history of basketball, it became integrated. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that story is represented here?
The Kentucky High School Athletic League has a tremendous history in the Commonwealth. I mean, there were some incredible teams and players. And through the 50s, Brown versus Board of Education, and getting into desegregation, you know, Kentucky had just incredible teams in the high school athletic league that would then, the champion and one other, would go down to Nashville and play in national tournament. And I believe 3 times in the 50s, a Kentucky team won the national championship, including Central High School out of Louisville, Dunbar out of Lexington, so many others. High Street from Bowling Green, Bunch High School it just escaped me. The Scots, Glasgow.
Okay.
Yeah. So this history, when it integrated in 1957, you're talking about an infusion of incredible talent, and just a cultural, you know, difference that there were a lot of interesting moments that bridged that cultural gap, and basketball was the common denominator. So vital in helping understand what's, you know, this Commonwealth's 400 miles from tip to tip. How do you get from there to there? Well, basketball was one way to get there.
A great connector for that.
Absolutely. And connecting city, country, rural, urban. It was a terrific connector through the many teams that participated.
Well, and so in this wall, I think this wall helps to tell a lot of that story.
This is where we want to bring to our younger groups and our school groups, and show them how things evolved, and connect the game, the sport, to the actual history of the Commonwealth and the actual culture of different pockets of the Commonwealth, whether it's the mountains in eastern Kentucky or the meandering rural areas in western Kentucky, the urban areas all along the way that made it just became that much more important as time went on. Hey, that small school won it, this small school can win it, that big school won it, we're competing against that. It was it is a way to learn a lot about the state's history as well.
Well, and as we look around the rest of this space, I know that you have your favorites. You would have to, because you, I'm sure, practically live here. So we're going to head next to what I think is one of your favorite spots and hear about that.
Excellent.
All right. So we're at a place where you were telling me before that this is really one of your favorite spots. And I tell you, the quote here, I think, talks a lot about what we were talking about in terms of growing up in Kentucky. You can't help but love the game. And I mean, I remember as a kid, certainly we had a basketball goal and people just watched basketball, or you played basketball, or you played basketball with friends. You know, it was all just a part of our DNA growing up in Kentucky. So talk to me about why this corner is one of your favorites.
Well, first, you're right. Growing up in Kentucky, you couldn't help but to love the game. That's a great quote. But over here, the fundamentals of the game, the fundamentals of greatness. We have some great players over in this corner, from Jim McDaniels at Allen County High School, Travis Ford from Madisonville North Hopkins High School, Wesley Unseld, Seneca High School, the great Wes Unseld from Louisville, and how they became great. It was a little thing that they mastered and they grew, and that mastery grew with the game. And then we have all these fundamentals of greatness where young student athletes can look at posting up, ball handling, confidence, character, blocking, dedication, agility, shooting, work ethic, learn about all these little things, mental toughness, passing, teamwork, that are so vital to making a good team a great team. You want to be good? That's fine. You want to be great? Make others better.
Well, I think that really gets to the heart of why, like, high school basketball can get to such a deep level for a human being, because it talks about making yourself better. And if you wonder, well, I don't have anybody in my life that plays high school basketball, why would I want to come to the High School Basketball Hall of Fame? But I think this is a really great example of talking about anytime our children go through sports, or they're coached by great coaches that are teaching them that, yeah, it's not great to run all of that mileage or do those drills over and over again, but what that does to you personally, and then what it does to the team, is exponential. And so I think this helps to tell the story, connecting even people who don't play the game to the deeper level of what benefit that can have to us as human beings.
The benefits are just vast, and you never know when they're going to show up. You never know when that little lesson in ball handling is going to show up in business 35, 40 years later.
Right.
The details. And that's what's so important about this wall over here, learning about those fundamentals of greatness, looking at who these great players were. And then imagine if you're a little kid and you see this photo, and you see the thousands of people here watching high school basketball players 70 years ago. This is 1956.
Wow, okay.
Okay, so 61 years ago, 62 years ago. But look at how they're dressed. Look at everyone in their shirt, tie, jacket, dresses, hats. You have some leather jackets and things, but this is formal, and this is so important. And you realize there were 10,000 people watching a high school basketball game between two rival teams that you can't imagine. You just imagine being a little kid saying, wow, what if I'm in that situation? What am I going to do?
Right.
Well, you're going to rely on those fundamentals of greatness to get you through that pressure. So those are real important connections, and that's one of the reasons this photo tells so much about Kentucky high school basketball, and probably my favorite. Those things evolve here. I love when people can come in and try and do the vertical jump test.
Yeah, I'm not going to try that.
No, okay. Well, we'll leave that alone. We won't get to 4 feet high. You can't jump like Griff, 4 feet off the ground.
I could try, but not. I don't think so.
But that's where you see these connections between those fundamentals and how do you overcome incredible pressure. And you just have to keep reminding yourself of those little things. You do those little things, big things will take care of themselves, especially in front of a crowd like this of passionate fans.
Oh, yeah.
And thousands of them.
Yeah, and certainly I'm thinking about our high school basketball games. They don't really look like that anymore with the coats and ties.
A different era, but that's part of the history.
Right.
Wow, that's how they dressed up back then.
Yeah.
There's still that formality in some people that have those connections, and I like to do that myself sometimes and go and dress because it's a special occasion. These events were special to those people, and little ones, and when you're growing up, you see that, how special it is. It can have an effect on you and make you be a little bit sharper and pay a little more attention to those fundamentals of greatness.
Get back to those basics that again make us who we are.
There were countless hours I've spent on a basketball court, dark, light, didn't matter, shooting a right-handed layup and a left-handed layup, and back and forth, because I didn't want to miss ever. And then the little games that I learned how to play with, the little games I created for myself. You have to make 10 free throws in a row.
Right.
You can't stop. You miss one, you go back to the beginning. You got to hit a shot from here, and here. 9 shots in a row before you can leave, or you go back to the beginning. All these little games that build up within yourself, challenge yourself to do better, and then you challenge yourself to make your teammates better, because that's what it's about, teamwork and fundamentals.
Right, and getting back to that, not just physical toughness, but mental toughness, and really building on all of those building blocks.
Mental toughness, you hear from a Hall of Famer like Ralph Richardson, who said, I'd spend about 30 or 40 minutes a day on nothing but rebounding. He just wanted to be the best rebounder. He was a big guy, but he wanted to get better at it. When you think about the little details of how can I make it easier for myself to score? How can I, work with my team to score better? Finding out that little edge, every little detail that you can rework, and that's where the greats start, with those little details.
And that's why they're here in the Hall of Fame. And I think that's a really good point too. When you come to visit the Hall of Fame, you talk about detail. I mean, there's a lot of detail here, and you could just kind of waft through here and take a couple minutes, or you could spend hours here really getting into the stories and looking for those details that are so important to those stories.
Absolutely. And Sarah, we've had people come through and get through and see what they wanted to see in 15 or so minutes, and then come out and say, I need more time. I don't have enough today, but I'll be back. Then they come back and they're spending 2.5 hours here, and they're looking up information on King Kelly Coleman. They're looking at books about the great teams from Eastern Kentucky and the mountains. You look at a photo like this, Carr Creek and Wayland, who were those schools? Who were those players? King Kelly Coleman being one of them. How did this all happen? So we like to say there are nuggets that can be extrapolated into gold mines. Right? There's a little, how do you get tasty popcorn? And that's the one thing we need here is an old school popcorn machine.
Absolutely, I could just smell it right now.
Yeah, exactly. You just take that little popcorn and what do you add? You add a little oil, a little fat, a little heat, a little pressure, and then all of a sudden you got this big, nice morsel that has a lot of different aspects to it. So you want those little nuggets, turn them into gold mines, and that's what we have here.
All right, well, we've got one more place that we want to visit before we wrap up our time here, so we'll head that way.
Terrific.
For our final look here, I wanted to be in front of this wall because this really is the centerpiece for what we're talking about with the Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame. It's our Hall of Fame inductees.
It's the Wall of Fame.
It's the Wall of Fame,
it's literally thousands of stories from these 100 members of the Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame. You can't imagine, when you look at one name, Jermaine Brown, Billy Ray Lickard, Allen Houston, Jamie Wells, whoever it is, when you look at that name, the notion of greatness can conjure up so many details and so many stories. And for some people, they know a lot of these names. For some, they might know one, but they know a lot about that one. And when you look at the talent, the collection of talent and dedication, if we all did something as great as they have done, and we all do, because some people, they will tell you, these Hall of Famers, they didn't do anything. They just had the opportunity and wanted to do the best they could. Some of it's quite simple, and it's in the elements of the fundamentals of greatness, that they all started out with a dream. They all started as a young kid that wouldn't know which end of the basketball to pick up, right? And then all of a sudden, things start happening and things evolve, and they find that love and that passion for the game in every one of these inductees. Male, female, coach, doesn't matter. They all have found, they'll tell you about that moment that the passion kicked in for greatness.
All right, well, I know we have to wrap up here pretty soon, but I do want to say, you've got some plans for the future. It doesn't end here, right?
No, absolutely not. This is ever evolving, ever changing. We'll be adding displays, and usually it's a year or 2-year rotation where we think about what could be coming next. And in the future, our original plans were to have another building, a new building addition to this, but that's a little further down the road with regards to historic building codes, things like that. But look, we're planning on a tremendous future here. We appreciate our visitors and what we've developed so far in our 5 months being open since last August. We've just seen so many positive things, and we plan on capitalizing and more in the future.
Can't wait to see it.
Thank you, Sarah.
We've been speaking with Paul Najar with the Kentucky High School Basketball Hall of Fame. Thank you for listening to Issues and Insights. I'm Sarah Fellows.